You are listening to 600 Saga. Today's feature is A Last Dance by Fanni Sütő. Ludmilla hadn't been able to sleep for weeks. Even if she managed to doze off, she woke up with her heart beating fast and sweat beads rolling down her forehead. As soon as she closed her eyes, she had the prickly feeling that somebody was watching her. But when she stared into the darkness, she saw nothing there, except for a wall decorated with old photographs and gold medals. Her room smelled of fading lavender and dusty memories, and if she inhaled deep enough, a taste of cotton candy and sweet triumph touched her tongue. Ludmilla knew why the shadows were thickening around her dreams, but she decided to ignore them. She felt for her glasses on the nightstand and went downstairs to make herself an English breakfast tea, the perfect beverage at 3 a.m. The rising steam fogged up her glasses, and Ludmilla shook her head as she took them off to clean them with her rose-patterned nightgown. You know, Jim, she blames you for her untimely death. But she's a silly girl, my darling. It was entirely my decision. She mumbled into her tea. No reply came from the empty kitchen. The following night, the noises began. The floor creaked and sighed, as though someone was dancing on it. She heard the soft whisper of tulle and the laughter of young girls. Ludmilla forced her eyes shut, and she resisted the temptation to open them, not even when the dying music of the orchestra and the thundering applause filtered through the noise of the coughing pipes and the barking neighborhood dogs. Ludmilla was a stubborn woman, and she was not going to be tempted into a feeling of remorse. Go away, she whispered into the darkness. I don't regret anything. She smiled at the thought, staggered out of bed and went to her old record player. She rummaged around the shelf, looking for the album she wanted. As the needle kissed the black body of the record, Edith Piaf started singing in a distant, creaky voice. Je ne regrette rien. Her first dance with Jim. It was, yes, almost 60 years ago. She remembered the touch of his hand, the lights dancing in his eyes. Ludmilla chuckled and she swayed to the music, just like on that night that changed the course of her life. The darkness in the corner watched her in dismay. On the third night, Ludmilla felt a cold touch on her face. She must have left one of the windows open, and it was the cold night air sneaking in. She turned on the light and saw the culprit immediately. It was indeed a window, the one next to her desk. The draft had also blown some papers across the floor. They were white and crumpled, like rose petals, and they reminded Ludmilla of her first big success on stage. They affectionately named her the White Rose, and her fans always lay a flood of roses before her feet. She smiled at the memory and crouched down to look at the pages. They were old newspaper cuts, praising her dreamlike performance in The Sleeping Beauty, her heart-cracking subtlety in The Nutcracker, and her graceful death in Swan Lake. Ludmilla sighed and swiped away the tears rolling down her cheek. The last article was about her, the star on the heavens of ballet, deciding to retire from performance on the height of her career. She fell in love, got pregnant, and chose family over fame and the love of the audience. It was a nasty move, Ludmilla said to the gathering shadows. At least now you acknowledge me. God, it was high time, said the young woman standing in front of her. She was pale, almost translucent, and wore a tutu that hugged her slender waist tighter than any lover. What do you want? Haven't you tortured me enough? Ludmilla whispered. The echo of her younger self smiled sadly. I want you back. You threw me away, killed me, and gave me up to forgetting. I want compensation. Look, I'm sorry. What is done cannot be undone. And if you asked me today, I would do the same thing again, said Ludmilla, avoiding the girl's eyes. I know, and I came to accept your version of the truth. I ask nothing but a last dance with you. I am not as vicious as you like to think. We're the same, after all. It sounds a little too nice. You were haunting me all this time with your creaking and creeping, and all you want is to dance? Yours didn't dim your mind or make your tongue any less sharp. Yes, there is another thing, but I think you figured that out already. The girl sat down next to Ludmilla and put her arm around her shoulder. You see, I knew it wasn't a peaceful reconciliation. There is time for everything. I hoped so much that I could convince you, but you're as stubborn as ever, the girl sighed. If you give me this dance, you can have him. She waved in the direction of the door. For the rest of time. There was a thickening of the darkness, night air and the smell of old pine trees, and Ludmilla's eyes filled with tears as she saw the shape of a man standing in the door. How are you doing, sweetheart? You got a little worn by the years without me taking care of you, but we'll have time to sort it out. Jim chuckled. You brought out all the big guns tonight, didn't you? Ludmilla said, looking at the ballerina who reached out for her hand. I'm afraid I'm not as flexible and gracious as a half-century ago. It doesn't matter. Her young self smiled. You'll see. It'll become easier with each step. But if you dare laugh at me, I'll show you that even an old woman can slap you hard. They laughed as they danced through the darkness to the melody of violins, and the man in the door watched them proudly. This was A Last Dance by Fanni Sütő. Fanni writes poetry, short stories, and a growing number of novels in progress. She publishes in English and Hungarian and finds inspiration in reading, paintings, and music. She writes about everything which comes her way or goes bump in the night. She tries to find the magical in every day and likes to spy on the secret life of cities and their inhabitants. Previous publications include The Casket of Fictional Delights, Tincture Journal, Enchanted Conversations, and Fundead Publications. Check out her website, inkmapsandmacaroons.com, or her Twitter, @funnypumpkin. Check our show notes for links. Music is provided by Mads. Learn more about 600 Saga, our authors, how to submit your flash fiction, and how to support the podcast in the show notes. This has been Mariah Avix and 600 Saga.